And call to order the Board of Education meeting, sorry. It's a little far away. Roll call, Ms. Casey.
Here.
Mrs. Kogan.
Here.
I am here. Mrs. Casey.
Here.
Mr. Johanning is excused. Mr. Keene.
Here.
Mr. Keel.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
And Mr. Sim.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge.
That's what it is. Neil's not here. I was trying to figure out why I was.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay,
If I may start with the
you may.
item 3.
Thank you.
The week of October 19th through the 23rd is recognized throughout New York State as School Board Recognition Week. It is through our partnerships with our board members and the entire unwilling willingness for our support of our students, their tireless efforts. Our board members certainly give an incalculable amount of hours to our community, and I want to thank each and every one of you for doing that. We have a proclamation on behalf of the staff and faculty and students of South Colony. I'd like to recognize our board members. The Governor Cuomo has also given an executive order. I'll read a portion of that proclamation. Whereas each year, the School Board Recognition Week is observed by more than 700 school boards in New York State. Our state public education system is designed to meet the educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to society in an ever-changing world. Whereas school boards are currently facing an unprecedented challenge of the pandemic while working closely with educators to prepare our children to learn, whereas members of the local school board members are dedicated to children learning in the community and devote many hours of service to elementary and secondary public schools, continuing to strive for improvement, excellence, and progress in education, recognizing that all children can be successful learners, especially when education is tailored to the individual needs of the children. Governor Cuomo signed this in recognition of all our school board members and gave his seal to recognize the School Board Recognition Week throughout New York State, October 19th through the 23rd. So each of our board members have a copy of this proclamation in your packet tonight. We also have a certificate of recognition for each of you from New York State School Boards Association. It reads, in honoring each of the board members for dedicated leadership in public education and continuing service to the children of this community. I want to thank each and every one of you. Without our volunteer board members, we would not be able to be as successful as we are, and certainly representing our community the way you do and providing leadership during these unprecedented times should not go without notice. So thanks to each and every one of you. We do have throughout our room, not sure if folks at home can see, but many of our students from our elementary schools have shared with us recognition as well, and thanks to our board members. We have also had some individual displays of what the students believe our board members look like. So if I can.
Kindergarten students.
Kindergarten students in Peter Elementary use their artwork, and hopefully you can see this at home, but we will perhaps, with permission, share a few of these out on the website. But thank you to our kindergartners for their talent and recognizing our board members as well. Some of them are really spot on, so we've got some future caricature artists in the making. So
Like
thank
looking
you.
into a mirror.
Certainly, Mr. Ryan's is pretty well. But honestly, thank you all, and we really appreciate your support and the time and efforts that you put in on behalf of all of our students in South Colony. So thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Real quick, I have to read the back of this for everybody home. So this is from Mrs. Backus's kindergarten class, and the kindergartners that leaders say the darndest things. Mr. Sim has fuzzy hair. Mr. Casey looks like Santa. Ms. Kogan is fancy. Ms. Gigliello isn't wearing a tie. Ms. Gizzy has big black hair. Mr. Johanning looks handsome in his tie. Mr. Keel is bald and looks very serious. Mr. Keen has a big beard and he looks happy. Mr. Ryan has a very nice smile. So, and it says, we thank you for your time, service, and all the energy you put into making South Colony a quality school district. And they want us to enjoy our treats and our week. And like Dr. Perry said, the room is just full of wonderful artwork and cute things that the kids have to say. And we thank everybody. This is wonderful. And it's way to put a smile on their face.
That was well done.
It's adorable. It's really cute. I need a motion for the approval of our minutes. Mr. Ryan and Ms.
Said
Susan.
that this morning.
Yeah.
Any questions? Motion made by Mr. Ryan, second by Ms. Guzzi. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's carried 8-0. Next, we have new business. I just want to start out quickly. I'm a big country music fan, so I listen to WGNA going to work every morning. And this morning, every morning they have the good news section. I don't know if you guys have ever heard it, but it's a lot of fun. And one of our own teachers, they didn't name the name, but they said the teacher at Shaker Road reached out to Scoops to see if they could borrow the picnic table so the kids could have some outside educational time and mask off time and eating time. And so it was Lisa Giuliano at Shaker Road and Emily Cessna and Debbie and Dave Leonardo agreed to all this. So Shaker Road kids got a chance to have a little normalcy during this kind of crazy time. So I want to put a shout out for that. I also wanted to shout out to Mr. Robolati because we actually have talked about just about everybody in this district. And of course, we love our students and we appreciate all they're doing. But you two joined on in a new role that I think you found quite interesting and very different. And we just a great big thank you for all you've been dealing with because this is definitely unprecedented. So thank you.
Timing is everything.
Yes. Anybody else with new business?
I'd like to, if I may, looking at these cards for these students, they're very talented and very comical. One that I picked up, thank you to the board members. I like the fun programs like PE, art, and music. The other one here is, thank you so much for everything, even the bus loop. So children are paying attention, but I'd like to reach out to the parents and the folks that are watching tonight, and please tell your student, son or daughter, we thank you and the students for hanging in there with these last 2 months. This is unprecedented. I believe, speaking to the kids that I know, they're getting through it. It's been a little bumpy, but they're getting through it. So we thank the parents, we thank the staff, but we need to thank the kids for hanging in there and pitching in and doing what needs to be done. So if you parents would relay that to your son or daughter, I personally would like to say thank you. I can't speak for the board, but I think we're all on the same page here. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Mr. King?
I had a couple things I wanted to kind of ask about. With the power outage, I'm curious what our volume was as far as absences. Would we have benefited had we pocketed a snow day to account for an odd situation like that? Because I know I didn't get power until midday Thursday. So my son went on, but my daughter didn't have that opportunity. But I have to imagine, I know the village, many homes in the village were out for days, so they likely missed Friday as well.
Well, we still have 2 snow days available to us. So we certainly considered that. One of the things that we also considered was our ability to have power in the school buildings. So we knew there were some residents in the area that certainly were without power, but 7 of our 8 buildings did have power. We felt we could at least have school, have hot lunches for students, and conduct a reasonably good school day. On that day, it actually was a pretty nice weather day, but unfortunately the power had really been knocked for a loop. So in working with my colleague in North County, we felt we could accommodate that. We certainly know there were limitations. There were families that were without power for 72 hours well into the weekend. And we asked for our staff to take that into consideration and certainly not mark a student negatively for not being able to attend. So overall, I think our attendance was down a little bit, but it was not atrocious. It was worthwhile to bring the kids in. And I think that by doing that, we've actually saved a day potentially for a worse inclement weather, snow or future power outages. So kind of balance the two needs. We certainly could have. There were a lot of schools in the area that did go and cancel for the day. Some went virtual, some did not. It really depended upon what the ability of the school was able to ascertain.
So Saturday, I got to drop my son off for PSATs. This was, new territory for us. But I know it's offered to 10th graders. And Chris, you may have some feedback on this. What, when looking at an equity lens, because I know that sophomores that are offered the opportunity are typically the ones that are taking the AP English, the AP Social, and such. I'm curious what the demographics are as far as those opportunities for, folks based on socioeconomic status and such. But would it be, I know the emphasis of it is to provide that testing opportunity for, for them to prepare for taking it their junior year. But I know it's relatively inexpensive to administer. Would it be easier to provide it the opportunity to all students rather than just those select few that may not be on the same track as their peers who are on a more advanced pathway?
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. We are offering it to all students now for the last.
As juniors.
It's open to
The juniors.
We pay for all the juniors to take it their junior year. We also provide it for the classes in 10th grade that you mentioned. I mean, technically, it's open to any student who's interested, but I think what your question really is about branding and how often is it discussed in other areas in 10th grade classes outside of the upper level,
right? The AP
courses,
classes,
stuff like that. We could certainly expand the conversation, but it officially is open to anybody who wants to take it.
at a cost, or would it still be no cost?
For PSATs, I don't think we charge it at all. For 11th grade, they're part of.
We've covered the bill. If we were to grow it to include all 10th graders, we would probably have to discuss that as a group, because it would change.
I mean, it's like $17 to administer, so, and then obviously some administrative fees. So I don't think it's a huge cost, but just perhaps an opportunity to level the playing field.
And I would also have to talk to Mr. Cacciadori, because this year was different than, this year's different than every year. It was kind of loaded, but the administration of it this year was different because we had been giving it on Wednesdays in school. So we really had a captive audience that we were giving it to. So our participation rate was pretty high the last few years that we had offered it during the weekday. Couldn't really do that now due to social distancing. So it was a Saturday. I'm interested in the numbers, how many of our juniors that were covered actually showed up and took the test. So I can get that data from Mrs. Misek or Mr. Cacciadori. But
I think the goal, though, Chris, of offering it as 11th grade is it's for the majority of our students, it's appropriate based upon their schooling at that time, and does give a precursor to taking the SATs. If we moved it up a year earlier, they may not be as prepared for it, but we certainly could have that conversation. But all 11th graders have that opportunity to eliminate those barriers, which I think is what you're trying to get at.
We embedded it into the curriculum, 11th grade curriculum and the 10th grade AP curriculum to make it not a requirement, but an expectation as part of those classes. They were doing prep work, they were preparing for it, so kids were confident and ready to take it, and it also provided them an opportunity to qualify for merit scholarship, which we've been fortunate enough to have some finalists in the last few years, and some semifinalists pretty much on an annual basis. So we want to keep our kids in those opportunities as well.
Last piece there. Is there any winter sports update at this point? Because we're basically a month out from when they would be starting
Eventually.
practices.
That That's still a work in progress. I would say that they're looking at 2 potential start dates for winter sports, mid-November or early January. Those are the dates that they're kicking around. It's still not anything that's in progress. What they've asked is they've surveyed the athletic directors in the region as well as the superintendents to seek feedback as to what school districts would be comfortable with participating in winter sports. They've identified some of the high-risk sports, low-risk and modified risks. Some of those include basketball, boys and girls, wrestling are part of the high risk. So consideration of how to safely provide for those sports. But it's still a work in progress. Nothing has been determined from New York State to allow the winter sports. And the biggest issue there is you're talking now indoor activities as opposed to allowing outdoors. So the governor has not released the executive order to allow that. We do think that in the next 2 weeks through his weekly updates, he's indicated that they will give some information from the governor's office as to whether or not it will be allowed. And once that comes out, similar to what we did in the fall for fall sports, our section will weigh in and provide guidance to individual school districts, and we'll work with the board as to what we feel we can appropriately offer. So it's still a work in progress. I would hope that we have something by the end of October, and within a 2-week time period, be able to message that out to families.
Dave, I think it's also a point that, as you mentioned in our facilities meeting about this issue, that some schools are using their gyms and their big areas for classes, and thus wouldn't be able to break them down and have a basketball or a wrestling practice. So I think that's another issue that will influence not us, because we're not doing that, but other schools might.
It's a good point. It's not going to impact us, but it will impact some of our neighbors that came up as part of the conversation, that they've repurposed those large spaces for other instructional needs. So it certainly has an impact. But I think the biggest issues right now are the governor giving authorization for some type of indoor activities and larger gatherings. What I would envision, if the go-ahead is given, is that they start with small group practices, what you kind of see at the college level that they're doing, where you have an individual student with a basketball and one hoop, and maybe the coach is directing them, but they're all socially distanced as part of the practice. So some of that is the next step in the process before team functions are allowed.
Excellent. The last piece I have, I got to join the Sand Creek PTA meeting last night. I know Jen Houlihan gave rave reviews about Mr. Robolati and the information he shared with regards to the situations that they were dealing with. So appreciate that. I think it put a lot of folks at ease.
Yeah, and for those that may not be aware, Mr. Robolati joined the call with our Sand Creek PTA as well as Mr. Marone due to some of the information that needed to get out to the public related to our positive COVID cases that have recently come out. We've learned a lot in just a weekend's time period. Chris has been constant calls with the Department of Health. Probably knows the protocols better than most in the area, and certainly has been a great liaison and helping to communicate that information out. So we thank him for taking that time and for helping to answer some of the questions that I know parents had. We're starting to evolve and understand the system a little bit better. And as with anything, we had plans in place, and we'll take that into consideration. We had some feedback from community members, which were helpful in terms of the timeline of calls that they were receiving when there was a positive case, because we don't necessarily get that information. And that helped us to change some items that we're doing in terms of notifying private school parents in terms of transportation. So we thank those that did reach out to the district office and to Mr. Robolati to share their experiences, because we learned from those experiences as well. But echo the same things, Mike. Thank you for recognizing.
Any other new business?
Mine's not dates.
Okay, and just real quick, I'd also like to thank the cabinet and the administrators for our wonderful gifts that we have up here, and our board clerk, Mrs. Lanigan. Very good as well. Thank you. Great gifts. I don't know if everybody has their little dance, which is wonderful. and a lot of great goodies. Okay, old business. Anybody? Seth?
Yep, I can do an update on, as you know, we've been putting together, we're in the midst of putting together a parental engagement committee. We want to look at things, how we can be a better service to the families in our district. We had first reached out to the PTAs and we're getting some good responses. We need a couple more units that we need to hear from. But I wanted folks to understand that we're not limiting this to PTA folks. We want to hear from folks who don't traditionally come to PTA meetings or do a lot or are able to do a lot with our schools. We are looking for folks who have special needs families. We're looking for folks of English is a new language learner families. We want to make sure these communities are also engaged in our South Colony community. We're also looking at families of color and anyone who has felt left out or not traditionally been plugged in to the communication of our school district. We're looking to be a resource for our community members and a place where folks can come and discuss what we can do better. So if there's anybody in our listening audience who would like to do that, I would invite you to email Mr. Backus. It's backus@scolony.org, or myself is cogan@scolony.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sim?
Yeah, just want to pass that. Back in the beginning of the year, before COVID, which I know was a long time ago for all of us, Mr. Casey and I visited Mr. DeFazio at the high school graphics arts department. We told him that the Village of Colony would be conducting a contest to develop a new municipal seal for their centennial celebration, which will be next year in 2021. And he was very excited, and his students were very excited. We also invited all the residents in the Village of Colony to partake in this contest. We got, I think, 15 entries from the graphics arts department, and the seal that I just passed around. Now, you got to remember, this went all through COVID, so they were working on this seal, then they got taken out of school, and that was when everybody was still trying to learn how to do some of the virtual things. So it actually went through the summertime, and we kind of just finalized it when they came back to school. So we're happy to announce that Ryan Appleton is the successful winner of the seal design. I know Ms. Gigliello is going to be recognizing him as in the president's spotlight when we can get back to coming to the meetings. And so is the village board will be recognizing him. But as you can see, I mean, the detail that he put together is just amazing. And the excitement of all the kids that did this, we want to thank all the kids, thank Mr. DeFazio and everyone for their efforts. It's a nice job.
Excellent job. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Communications?
We have 4 comments tonight. First comment was related to communication during the reopening forums. It indicated that students would be seated alone or with other household members. Why was there a change in protocol for busing? So as our plans had evolved, New York State had changed some of their transportation guidance, and they had recommended a 50% occupancy rule. Our typical buses have 66 passengers, so our trans department had scheduled buses for a maximum of 33 students. This put most students in a single seat, but did put some students on certain runs with another student. We did this because we were able to ensure that students were also wearing masks was one of the requirements that we added in. So once we required students and drivers to wear masks on the bus, we felt it was appropriate. We've updated our plans and want to make sure if we didn't communicate that out to the public that people are aware of that. So far it's been going well. We have had one situation involved in a positive case on the buses, but overall we have close to 75 buses rolling every day with thousands of students, and by and large, things have been going exceptionally well in transportation. So we're thankful for that, but we do need to continue those protocols that are in place. The next comment comes in and says, I'm very proud to be part of the district that is committed to accepting parent feedback, reflecting and adjusting your processes when needed, specifically related to COVID transportation department handling. I feel confident should an exposure occur again with our children, it will be handled well. This came in from Cornelia Denon. Ms. Denon had reached out to us with a concern, but also with information related to the timeline that she had shared. And Mr. Rubalati not only had spoken to her, but met with her as well and tried to address her concerns. But we did learn information that was beneficial to us, and we put some of those suggestions into practice immediately. So again, it's new to all of us. We appreciate the feedback from Ms. Denon. Ms. Houlihan had reached out on behalf of St. Creek PTA. I'd like to thank Mr. Rubalati, Mr. Marone, and Mr. Bardero for their attendance at our meeting Monday to address questions and concerns related to the positive COVID case in the transportation department. We appreciated their transparency as well as the assurance that the district would adjust its role in communicating with families proactively should another positive case occur. This information was shared was thoughtful, reflective, and responsive, and thank you. So thank you, Mr. Rubalati, for doing that. And certainly, we're going to continue to do the best we can to message that out to families. We did have a message this evening that went out to Veeder community for a positive case in Veeder. We're thankful at this particular time that it seems to be isolated to an individual, but there may be some occurrences that impact other community members due to outside activities. So although precautions are taking place in school, a lot of times we'll mitigate the risks of exposure in school. We know that there are activities going on in the weeknights and weekends that can also put our students and community members at risk. So just continue to be mindful of that and do the best we can to protect ourselves. And for those families that are doing their part in terms of the self-check and making sure that we're not sending children to school with any signs or symptoms of COVID, and staff members that are not reporting, we appreciate that. It takes everybody's involvement to keep us all safe. So thank you for the feedback there. Last question was related to when will we possibly see middle school interim reports, including the virtual academy? How can we make intelligent decisions to send our children back in school, in-school learning versus stay virtual without knowing their progress? It's not fair to make virtual academy parents make a decision in such a hurry by the end of this month without knowing their child's progress. So this is related to the opt-in deadline. We had addressed this at the last meeting to let the community know that this first initial deadline closes on the 30th of October. It gives us an opportunity to ascertain those families that know now that they would like to try to return to in-person instruction for second semester. But we will have a second opt-out period, very similar to what we did the first time around. We anticipate that opening up in the month of November and closing on December 1st. But any information that we can gather from families that do know now will allow us more time to plan. The one thing I'll let our families know is that requests to return are not guaranteed. We still are under the COVID protocols and restrictions, so we will try to plan accordingly and do what we can to accommodate those requests. But we simply would not be able to accommodate 1,000 students to return to in-person instruction based upon our current restrictions. So we thank those families that reached out. For those that need more time, we will open up that survey. Once it closes October 30th, we'll open it up a second time through December 1st. So the last part of that was interim reports for middle school virtual academy. The school year started on kind of like a 2-week delay. So interns are kind of delayed by 2 weeks. So I would anticipate that the middle school interns will be out within the next 2 weeks, I think is what we were looking at. And I know they're working on that, as well as the progress reports for the virtual academy. Some of the grading is being adjusted a little bit because certain courses are meeting less frequently. So when you start to talk about how to do traditional grading when you're not meeting as often or in the same traditional manner. So our staff are going through some transitions as we start to produce that out. We want to make sure the progress reports are worthwhile and informative for our families. So, thanks for that comment.
Okay, facilities, board committee reports for the facilities and transportation, excuse me, Mr. Casey, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. I'll go first and then refer to my colleague. We met on October the 15th, the Facilities and Transportation Committee, a couple of member items. There was some concern about vehicles parking inside the gate near the track, on the grass and that area. Dr. Perry is going to contact Mr. Gardino and discuss that. There is an MOA agreement with the village and the school district on fuel purchasing, sharing of equipment. Most recently, the district saved some money with the help from the village to put that little access road down at the Shaker Elementary School. That helped considerably. Planned bus purchase for 2021 and 21 to 22. A number of years ago, we leased 5 school buses, and those leases are coming up, and the decision is going to have to be made after some more discussion on if we buy the lease buses outright rather than put out a bus referendum. Buying the 5 lease buses, the $160,000 compared to $596,000. So as you can imagine, there's going to be some lively discussion on that, whether or not we're going to buy new or hang on to these ones that we've been using for the last 5 years. The bus lift and the bus garage, that has been completed. There were some concerns with one of the lifts. One of the cylinders had some holes in it, and it was deemed unsatisfactory, and that had to be cleared up. The additional lifts in the older bus garage are in very good shape, and I think, Peter, now, correct me if I'm wrong, all lifts are up and operating.
Yes, they are.
Perfect. The COVID-19 bus cleaning protocols update, the foggers are being used twice a day, correct, Peter?
Yes.
Handrails and seats are cleaned between each bus run, and as was discussed here a moment ago with Dr. Perry, the students are assigned some seats, and that's going very well, I would imagine.
Yes, it is.
Okay, very
It's
good.
part of my report.
All right, good. Mr. Ryan?
Just quickly on number 5, as we discussed previously, our bus garage and district office are a little behind the times in terms of our needs. We're looking at various options for property purchase to, in the future, consolidate those operations. We did look at a number of properties. Looks like at this time, and Ms. Fisher, you chime in here, you have the most current information, that the only property that is really in play at this point would be the Broderick Street property. And we also have our realtor looking for other properties to explore. Just at this time, I think those are the 2 areas that we're looking at.
That's correct.
And also, the only other thing, so we'll continue that. We don't want to put a lot of money into facilities that are outdated and not going to be useful to us, but we do have to keep them up to state requirements. So we'll continue to work on that. The only other thing I wanted to mention, Mr. Casey, is that in tonight's agenda, item 10D, reports for recommendations for actions, you'll see that there is a bit of good news for the monetarily. We did not, in Leishkill, have to have need for 3 additional access points. We got rid of the asbestos abatement without work that was originally looked at, so we saved some money there. And I don't have the figure in front of me, it's on the report, but it's a substantial amount. So that's $28,000 there, so that's what you'll see, and we'll be voting on tonight in item 10D. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for December 17th at 4 o'clock.
Thank you. Okay, next we have reports for information and study, and we have Mr. Tanya from the Transportation Department.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I am happy to report to you tonight that in these crazy times we're living in, our school opening this year went very, very well, I think. We didn't know what to expect with the increased traffic, the changing ridership patterns. The drop-off locations at a couple of our schools changed. The bell schedules at a couple of our private parochial schools changed in late August. But with all of that, I think when we went around the first week of school, we saw it just all come together, all gel. So I really I need to take this opportunity to thank our office staff at the bus garage, the drivers, the building principals and their office staffs for the excellent job they did in just stepping up. And like I said, it just all came together and the buses are on schedule. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Colony Police Department because of the fine job they've been doing for us at the different schools, helping to mitigate the impact of the increased traffic. Our buses are on schedule, and a large part of that is due back to the great job the Colony Police are doing, keeping the traffic moving in and out of our schools. So a big thank you to them as well. You have a handout here in front of you. As on page 2, as you can see, our new normal. These are items that we had to adjust to last minute. You can see the first item on the left side of the page. We went through every bus and we numbered and lettered every seat similar to an airplane. So every seat has a number and a letter, and students are assigned to those seats, those numbers and letters. So you may be in seat 7A or 8D, but that's what we went with. We numbered every seat, like I said, similar to what the airline does. All the buses are equipped with the decon sprayers, which we have a picture of there. The drivers are, as Mr. Casey alluded to earlier, drivers are spraying the buses after their AM runs and again after their PM runs, doing that twice a day. And in between runs, they're wiping down the seats, the tops of the seats and the handrails, all the common areas that are touched with the wipes. I want to thank the parents and the students for the great job they've been doing too, because we gave every driver an extra set of masks. And I believe every packet had about 10 masks in them. And we put one on every bus for that student that shows up at a bus stop without the mask on. And I can honestly say that you can count on one hand the number of drivers who have needed additional packs of masks. So a big thank you to the parents and the students for coming to the bus stop prepared to board the bus. They're wearing their masks and not forgetting to have their masks on. So that's been going very, very well. So we're very pleased with that. I just want to thank the parents and the students for that. On the next page, I just had a quick overview of what the operation is doing this year. You can see we're transporting 5,180 students to 68 different schools throughout the Capital District. And the breakdown is as follows: 13 public, 27 private and parochial, 19 special ed, and 9 charter schools. And last year, in addition to our regular routes, we covered 162 field trips, 353 athletic trips, and our combined fleet mileage was 604,839 miles. Now those numbers are, obviously they're way down from the year prior, being shut down in March. But in the year prior, we covered 299 field trips, 584 athletic trips, and our total fleet mileage was 728,000. So you can see the impact on the shutdown in March, how it drove those numbers down. The next page, we have some projects that we were able to complete this summer. The big one was our fuel system, our software update and our hardware update with the fuel system we were able to do. This summer, we went with a web-based program, which is nice because it's able to communicate with our Fleet Vision. That's the software we use in the shop. So when a driver enters the odometer at the fuel pumps, it goes into our Fleet Vision software. It has the ability to. We have to get that set up. We're working on that. And we also updated our fire suppression system over the fuel islands. That now is a shut off at the building. We have an emergency shut off for the pumps on the building. And on the next page, as Mr. Casey mentioned earlier, we did get the lift repaired. That project was due to be completed in July, but because of COVID, the parts were held up, so it was completed last week. And then you can see there's a picture there of one of the cylinders with the pinhole leak in it. That's what we were dealing with. And on the next page, the last big ticket item that we're working on is the soffit repair on the rear of the main building. So we're hopefully that will be done. That's still a work in progress. The maintenance crew is doing that in-house, so hopefully within another week or two that'll be done. And then I also want to mention the fact that our fleet, our mechanics maintain a fleet of 75 school buses and 28 other district-owned vehicles, whether it be IT or food service or maintenance. I know you already know this, but I think it bears repeating that we have some of the best mechanics in the business. all of our buses, as you know, our buses are inspected every 6 months. And New York State DOT, their calendar year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So for the period of April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020, we presented 148 buses for inspection, and our pass rate was 99.32. So our mechanics are really doing an awesome job. I can't be more proud of them for the job they do day after day. The next page, I have some future issues. A lot of these I've talked to you about before, but I think they bear repeating. The driver situation, we got a little reprieve from that this summer, and I think it was because of the economy. We picked up a few extra people this summer. One gentleman, for instance, is in the sound business, is a sound mixer at arena concerts, but obviously with no concerts going on, he's looking for work. So we're able to pick him up. We hope he enjoys driving the school bus and wants to make a career out of it somehow, but who knows? But we did pick up a few extra people this summer, so, but I think when the economy picks back up, that'll be resurrected. That issue will come back, the driver recruitment and retention. 3-point seatbelts, that keeps every year that's being introduced in the legislature. Obviously with the economy the way it is, I don't see that happening anytime soon, but I do see it happening within maybe 3 to 5 years. And the other big ticket item, of course, is the electric school bus.
I like the big plug in the back.
Yeah, like that.
You really long cord.
Yeah, exactly. Governor Cuomo signed into law last year the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Plan. So now it's a law, and it does call for 70% renewable energy by 2030. And one of the major focus of this, one part of it, is publicly owned fleets, MTA, CDTA, publicly owned fleets, of which we are one. So there is going to be a push to move into the electric school bus. NIAP, the New York Association for Pupil Transportation, that I'm a member of, is adding this to their legislative agenda to go back to the legislature and say, hey, this is great. We all want to do our part, but we need help. No one can afford a $300,000 school bus. So it's, if you're going to make this the law, if that's a target, that's fine, but we need help. So hopefully we will get something in the form of help before 2030, but it's coming. And then the last item that I want to talk to you about is one that I'm so proud of, and that's the community outreach. The drivers, I'll tell you, if there's anybody out there with bigger hearts than staff of the transportation department, I'd like to know where they are. This year marks our 15th year. This December will mark our 15th year of working with the Marines for Toys for Tots, Stuff the Bus. 15 years. So just think about that for a moment. 15 years of coats and toys. They've reached thousands and thousands of disadvantaged children through their hard work, and it's really a tribute to their efforts that they've touched so many lives in such a positive way. And as if that wasn't enough to keep them busy, 2 years ago they began this community food drive program where they give you come in, they give you a list, a shopping list. You're free to go to ShopRite, Hanford, Price Chopper, Aldi's, wherever you go. You fill out, you get everything on the list, you bring it back, they sort it out, and they box it. And then the Saturday before the holidays, they deliver it to the students. That they get the list from Bill Boardman's office, and they go out all morning, Saturday at 8 o'clock, and come back after noon, and they deliver this food with the intent to get these students over the 2-week break period, the week and a half break period. So, like I said, they're just some of the best around when it comes to the generosity. This past spring, we also did a food drive at Veeder and Sand Creek, and they collected so much food that we got a call from the head of the regional food bank thanking us for the amount of tonnage that he saw come in with the delivery. So again, it's I can't talk enough about the great job they do in community outreach. So I'm very proud of them and the works they do. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Do you guys know what's going to happen this year with Stuff the Bus and the train? And
Well, we got a list. No, I don't believe there's going to be a train.
There's no train. They are working on the dates for Stuff the Bus
Yes.
within our school communities, and we will not have the traditional assemblies indoors, but we will have some activity outdoors. Amber was working with the elementary principals and Pete to determine the dates that we have So we are planning a collection throughout the month of November, and we'll be able to help our families in need, so.
Yeah.
Are they still finding where you deliver coats?
I don't believe there's gonna be
I
any
don't
codes
think
this
there
year
was.
because of the congregation. I heard that today, that they're trying to avoid any congregation, so I don't believe there's any codes this year.
I think it's strictly the toys.
Yes,
There's a
sir.
question on, outside companies that we sometimes have to contract to, or the first student type companies.
Yeah.
Are we, number one, I assume we're still doing that on a limited basis, and if we are, number two, are we satisfied or are we supplied with the information as to them taking the same excellent precautions that your people are taking to
Yes,
conform to the standards that are set?
I'm happy to tell you that we have one contracted group this year with, for St. Coleman's with Durham. And as far as we know, they're telling us they're doing everything by the book and following the same precautions that we are. So, and they've had no complaints from the school or the parents.
So one of the things we did when we did the bid this year for contracted transportation, we wrote in the COVID requirements right into the bid so that they have to comply with it. We worked with Bill Ryan to make sure that we had language to address it in the bid specs.
Good. Thank you.
What's that?
Drone photo?
Yeah, that's Colony Police. That Colony 20, that was another thing that the drivers were able to do back in late May for the senior class last year. That photo was taken by the Colony Police Department with their drone unit.
I think 200 feet was the max we could go up.
Yeah, because of the
there.
airport. Yeah, I think they limited us to, yeah. We weren't able to get as high as we wanted to.
On the flight path.
Thank you. All right, so I need to
Thank you.
make room for Mr.
We'll let
Lovett.
Mr. Lovett know. Thank you.
I'm sure you say those,
Yes.
She's gonna tell me tomorrow.
yeah, I'm sure you say those same things to the drivers that you told us.
Yeah, not enough. I need to,
You can convey our thanks as well.
I will. I need to do that more often.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beg your pardon?
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Lovett.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Next, we're gonna have our K-12 instructional technology report with Mr. Lovett.
All right. Well, thank you for having me in.
Nothing's been going on for the last 6-7 months. Been nice and quiet. I did hand out the presentation. I wasn't sure what this was gonna look like without the screens up. So I did print out. I'm not sure if it was shared with you or not. If not, not a big deal. So kind of moving directly into the presentation, as always, we link all the work that we do to our vision statements of academic achievement, culture of success, commitment to district initiatives, and preparing all learners. Before we get going any further, I do just want to stop and recognize the IT support team. It's really been quite the roller coaster ride for the last 7 months. And as I was putting a presentation together and really reflecting back on everything that's been going on since March, 2 things really kept coming to the front of my mind. One is how lucky I am to work with the team and how lucky we are to have this team supporting us and keeping us up and running. Because it was touch and go there for a little while. We closed and everybody got to go home and we stayed. And they did a great job, this group. And then we'll touch back on that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. But I did just want to let them kind of have their moment in the sun. Having been in IT leadership in 2 other districts, I've seen what it can look like when people aren't pulling in the same direction, and we all were, and I'm very thankful for all of that. I just wanted to make sure that their hard work was acknowledged. So moving into really back to March 13th, when schools closed and families were frantic to get their students' devices, we formulated a plan to meet the need. We collected and assigned help desk tickets, scheduled days that individuals within our department could come in and safely work and prepare devices and In some cases, we had to go into buildings and pull devices, in a lot of cases, go into buildings, into schools and pull devices out of carts and break down tech hubs and things along those lines. This was also true for high school students who had devices that were broken, or as devices went home, batteries would die and screens would break and chargers would go out. And so all of these things, we were providing service for. We did schedule weekly pickups at the high school, working in a curbside manner, which has sort of become commonplace now with restaurants. But we were doing that. We were asking people to stay in their cars, and they would come up and say their students' names, and we would run out and we would give them their device. We also worked hard to ensure that teachers who weren't necessarily prepared for something like this is not something we've ever done before. So we worked really hard to ensure classroom teachers were versed in Google Meet, had access to all of the district approved web-based resources, and we built a ton of tutorials, and we hosted Google Meet PD sessions to help them properly use these resources along the way. I did include a photo. That photo is compliments of Mr. Backus's Twitter feed from March 27th. That is a Friday. It is one of the few Fridays that was not pouring rain. It seemed like every Friday that we hosted a Chromebook pickup or swap out, it was
That's why I
pouring
kicked
rain.
my kid out. I said, you go get it.
Yeah. So there we are with our table enjoying the sun, and you also notice that the courier is there. So we were able to use that for some of our families that didn't have transportation. And so, we thank, Sherry and Sherry's team for allowing us to do that. So as we moved through the spring and moved into the summer, normally our world would have slowed down and we would have been able to work on our projects and things along those lines, and that was just not the case. We started to get ahead of preparing devices for the hybrid students in 7 through 12. Remember, 9 through 12 already have devices at home. And we were able to pull and label and prep about 700 devices for all the 7th and 8th grade students. That was a huge job between my team and some of our summer kids. It was a huge, I don't know if you can picture what 700 Chromebooks looks like stacked up in the library, labeled with kids' names on it. It was impressive. We did not have that same luxury with our opt-out students. We opened that window and we were managing the opt-outs as they came in, and then we reopened that window, and the IT department was left with about 7 days to get all those devices configured and prepped and turned back around for distribution. That ended up being another 600 devices. It was a lot. We then worked with Kara Granato to publicize and host 6 days for Chromebook pickup. Unfortunately, of those 1,300 devices, only about half of them were picked up, which created quite a little bottleneck for us once school started. Because once the teachers came back, we were getting pounded with help desk tickets in the building, which is normal. But then we were also kind of working through getting devices out. But as I had referenced with the team earlier, not a complaint. Sleeves rolled up. How do we get this done? Comp hours available, comp time hours available. And we got them all done, and we got our tickets down from in the 400s to 500s open tickets down into the low hundreds, which is phenomenal. So speaking of the help desk, it's almost staggering in the amount of traffic that we handled. A normal spring for us would have been about 1,000 tickets submitted and closed. A normal fall, say July through October, would be somewhere around 1,500 to 1,600. Spring of 2020 was 1,398, which is mind-blowing when you consider there wasn't a single teacher in the building. That is all tickets that came from home. Unbelievable. And then if you roll that forward from July of 2020 to October of 2020, 2,844 tickets submitted to the help desk. That is up 82%, and we handled it. So one of the ways we handled it, and it has been hugely helpful for us, and we continue to put resources into this, is the knowledge base within the help desk. It's a public-facing knowledge base. It's been a tremendous asset for us. It's tutorial videos, step-by-step directions for essentially anything that a teacher or a family would need, from Aspen, GoGuardian, iPads, iPhones, Chrome browser, Chromebooks, Meet, Google Classroom, Docs, and Slides. Like I said, it does have a public-facing side to it. You can access it from the district website, staff resources. It says knowledge base right on the right-hand side. It's really quite impressive, and we continue to build it out. As help desk tickets come in, we're able to cherry pick some. One of the beauties of the help desk is we can see the problems that are popping up over and over and over again.
Right.
For example, when we sent all these devices home, many of them had been sitting since March, and they needed to be updated. And so we were able to make a quick video, step-by-step directions, and we were able to post that in the knowledge base. We are then able to post things from the knowledge base directly into help desk ticket responses so that we can have people try this. Here's a quick, here's what it looks like if you're a parent. Here's what it looks like when your student logs into Google Meet. Here's how to make sure you're logged into the proper, we were getting over and over again in March. People would go to log into a Google Meet, they would have multiple kids at home, and they couldn't get into the Google Meet because they needed to be in the Meet as little Tommy, but little Johnny was logged in. And so we made a video to solve that problem. It was tremendous. So that knowledge base will continue to grow, but it was a huge help for us, as we kind of work through the spring and into the summer. So as Chromebook break fix, continues to keep us busy, we are still moving forward with some of our goals that we weren't able to complete last year. One of which being the update of the disaster recovery plan. So this is a big project. It includes a lot of moving parts, including E-rate, network gear, lots of configuration. So we are slowly progressing through that. We are going to have, I believe in the next week or two, we bought universal power supplies to keep our servers up and running. When the power goes down, the universal power supply will keep everything up and running for an amount of time that we can then safely shut them down. So there's no data loss and things like that. So that will be happening soon. We are also upgrading. We're going to cut over to an upgraded amount of bandwidth. We are going, we're going to bring in another gigabyte. So when I got here in 2017, we had 300 megabytes. We then added 1 gigabyte to that connection. So we had 300 plus 1 gig, and now we will have 300 plus 2 gigs. That will be hugely helpful both going forward instructionally and also as we move to the disaster recovery plan, which is cloud-based. And so we're able to store some of our things safely off-site in case we do have a disaster on-site. We were also very fortunate to be able to secure some hotspots for families in need. That has been helpful. And we met with T-Mobile today, and we are going to try to work through a grant. In case it comes across your desk, it's called the 10 million project, I believe it's called. But we are going to try to get more and more of these hotspots into needy families' hands with as little cost to the district as possible. So, as we have, as I'll reference on October 9th, one of the things that we were able to, flesh out when we did that virtual day is we do have some people who don't have internet at their house. Not many, but enough that we need to pay attention to it. It is something we should care about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a quick basic question, and I've been asked this a couple times. Does each of the students who need this equipment have access to it, or are we still working on getting equipment to some outlying families that may not?
In terms of Chromebooks, anybody if you are an opt-out student and you want a device, you are entitled to a device. If you are a hybrid student in grades 7 through 12, you are given a device whether you want it or not, because you have to be able to bring your device into school on your in-person days, and we don't let the personal devices in for students. It would make it too hard for teachers to use GoGuardian. There would be too many risks with devices getting lost, stolen, broken. So all of 7 through 12 have been given a device, and anybody who wants one who's an opt-out has one. If we go fully remote, it's going to be close.
Okay.
it's gonna be
Yeah,
close.
I was gonna ask that.
We have also supplied devices to some teachers in the hybrid classrooms. It's gonna be close. I think we're gonna be okay. We've also got some devices on order. We have 500 devices on order that are set aside for the 8th graders going into 9th grade. We always order them in the fall so that we can prep them in the winter, and we hand them out usually in the early spring. We also have another 400 ordered as just in case. The problem is nothing is coming in a timely manner.
Right.
So we had the opportunity to make an order just in hopes that it just comes in at a decent month. If they come in by March, I'll be ecstatic. So it's gonna be close. But like we've done every time we've been stuck in a situation like this, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out.
Most recently, Mr. Ryan, when we went to our virtual practice day, we had, Jim, about 200 requests at
Yeah.
family. So
Yep.
although we had thousands of students that were going home at the elementary level, majority had indicated to us they did have access to a device at home. So we asked them to prioritize, if you really needed a device now, please request it.
Yep.
So we did that, and we were able to get those 200 students a device. We'll use that same process if we have to have a rolling outage day, to be able to send them home with the device. And as the manufacturers catch up to the demand throughout the entire country, we're hopeful that we'll get to a point where that won't be a concern. But every district is facing the same thing. I know Jim's been working with his team to repair and refurbish those that can be repurposed and get it back in the hands of students.
Yeah, it's really, it's been quite helpful. We have a girl on staff by the name of Nicole Manico, and she primarily is working on break fix right now. And without her, I'm not really too sure. Batteries, screens, things along those lines, things that kids do. You give a 12-year-old a Chromebook, screen's gonna break. It's not uncommon, and it's not the end of the world, but because we can fix those things in-house, and we have the ability to, unless you throw it in a pool or slam it on the ground, both I've seen happen, she's probably gonna be able to get it working again. So it's really been very helpful. I was also very impressed when we did the virtual day. I put some things in place. I really wanted some of the onus to be on the buildings for the distribution. So when we were taking in requests on the spreadsheet, we brought the principals into the fold because we wanted the kids who requested devices from Veeder, we wanted them to come from Veeder and be managed by Veeder in case we had to go into an emergency situation. And every single one of the buildings stepped up. It was hyper organized. It was very, very successful. So credit to them on that front too. There can be a lot of moving parts when you're dealing with Chromebooks just based on sheer volume. So when you're trying to hand out, 50, 60 Chromebooks, even though that doesn't sound like a huge number, they all look the same. And, it can be a very, very challenging situation.
Jim, and then one thing to keep in mind, the board was part of the initial pilot. We started out with 125 students at the high school, going on about 6 years ago now, I would estimate. And since that time, we've gone from 125 to 4,000.
I would expect more than that.
So over 4,000 devices that the IT department is managing with predominantly the same staff. I think we added about a 60% of a tech to the overall FTE in the department.
Because Nicole's part-time.
Correct. So they're really doing a phenomenal job, and they're shifting from desktops and PC labs, if you will, to the portable devices. So that's certainly changed the dynamics of the department.
One of the serious issues we are facing is for anybody who has an iPad or an iPhone, the manufacturers sort of artificially cap how long those lifespans are.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a large number of devices that are getting close to needing that replacement. A larger number than we would normally normally we buy 500 for the 8th graders into 9th grade, and we recycle those through. And then as those kids graduate, we usually get, 300 or so back from graduating seniors. More than half are still good, and then we take those and we put them back down in the elementary schools and whatnot. There's a bubble in there from partially it was the summer of 2017 when we were able to make a large purchase of Chromebooks. And those Chromebooks are starting to get to that point where we have to be conscious of they're not going to be usable for 2-3 years from now. They're going to be out of commission. So it's something that we've talked about a lot, but it is going to be a very real situation that we're going to have to deal with. We've been able to keep them up and running. We do there's a buzzword in our department called power wash, which is basically take the Chromebook and set it back to factory default. That usually fixes a lot of problems. And so we just power wash it, update it, power wash it, change the battery, change the screen, put it back out. You can only do that for so long, but we'll do it until we can't do it anymore. So along those, instructional lines as well, because there, a lot of our focus has been on support. And we can't lose focus on instruction. We've continued to be very vigilant with maintaining our Ed Law 2D compliance. As you can imagine, in the spring, every single vendor was offering a free trial for this, that, and whatever. And to our teachers' credit, they ran every single one of those things through me. We did secure confidentiality agreements with many of them. And, we were able to continue using the ones that have secured confidentiality agreements. There is a little bit of light, or a little bit of a rainbow at the end of this, and that is, some of the instructional practices that our teachers have been forced into utilizing are best practice, and we will continue to be able to use them after this ends. Lord only knows when that is. But especially at our high school where we are one-to-one, these types of things that are going on now, the screencasted videos, the blended learning philosophy, the personalized instruction philosophy, those can continue, and they've started to filter down into our lower grades. So instruction will be forever changed for the better following this. And that's one of the things that's kind of keeping us going through and keeping us running as we kind of deal with a lot of this craziness. And finally, we've been working very hard to support not only the virtual academy, but the in-person pod sections. One of the things that is easy to forget, it's easy to see broken Chromebook, fixed Chromebook, here's a new Chromebook, but behind the scenes, Aspen has to be set up to manage all of these things. So the virtual academy for the middle and elementary school, they are new schools. And so Tim and Robert had to essentially build new schools with new schedules, with new teachers, populate them with students, make sure that they're all up to date, and keep them up and running. Every pod in every elementary school and middle school is a new section, so they had to manage that as well. And all of the programs that we use are all linked to Aspen for populating student accounts and for logging in. So to keep all that stuff up and running, it really was a full-time job. And kudos, they've kept it up and running. We've also continued ongoing PD to our staff. We had a very successful October 9th. And one of the things that has come out of October 9th was not only were we able to utilize the instructional strategies that we know work with our virtual academy kids, our teachers who are in person and our kids are in person, we had a chance to use those on them as well. So if we do have to shut down, we are in a better position now than we were on October 8th to do that. And then finally, I've referenced multiple times, how important IT has been in keeping us up and running. But the reality of it is we can't do our jobs without your support. So I can't thank you enough for, Board of Education Appreciation Week. Thank you a million times over. I feel like when we ask for things, we always get your support, and it really does mean a lot to us. So thanks a million. Thank you.
Jim, thank you. One last thing, Jim, I just wanted to keep the board aware of is we still partner with Manans for additional IT support and IT technology instruction. So we partnered with Manans. They had a need for network support, and that has been a benefit to both of us because we've learned from some of the implementation and rollouts that they have utilized, as well as Manans has developed a good work relationship with our staff, and would like to continue that partnership and perhaps expand it in the future. So kudos to
Dr. Long has reached out with, she's very happy with the services that we've provided her.
That's been a benefit to the district. We've, charged them for services. We've been able to use some of those funds to facilitate IT facilitators within the building, provide some training, and also provide a good level of service to our partner school admins.
Question, and this may be Dr. Perry, it may be Mr. Lovett. As we become more reliant on the Chromebooks, we've discussed the 7-8 computer ed programming. Would this be that opportunity to perhaps reimagine how and what the kids are utilizing? Because, and perhaps we need to present something sooner because we're asking, our K-6 students to utilize the Chromebook. So I don't know if we've looked at delivery of helping with skills in that sense.
They certainly have. They haven't formalized anything this year because of the changes with COVID, but it is part of the conversation as to how to push that down into the lower grades. I know Jim has done a number of things with individual classroom teachers, right down to kindergarten, to get kindergartners used to logging in and knowing their password. And so we've got a set of standards and instructional targets for each grade level. But as far as the formalized instruction, I do see that having to evolve. What we have to have is something to replace it at the 7-8 level and not take away from the instructional time at the 5-6 level. So that's kind of the challenge right now. It fits better in the 7-8 role in terms of the schedule, time frame, but we know the instructional, the kids need it earlier in their careers than they did 15 years ago.
Yeah, on a broader level, it really is going to be helpful to develop the computer science program at the high school. Right now, to some extent, we could use better prepared 8th graders coming in to 9th grade to really facilitate those programs, and we are working on that. And to your point, yes, I think that will change over time.
And I also want to give Mr. Lovett credit. I know he joined the PTSA meeting last month. He's been available for me at Sand Creek, and so that's definitely appreciated because, well, Sand Creek, you didn't even get to present. You spoke for 2 hours, and it was just questions from those that were there.
Well, I'll echo what I said on that. I would rather spend, multiple hours on Google Meets with parents getting the correct answers as opposed to having to read the wrong answers on Facebook.
Thank you so much, and please thank you, Stan, for us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Operational plan.
Oh, yeah.
So in front of you is a 90-page document, the district operational plan. Leave it open, just think. I won't go through everything, but in here identifies our annual goals and targets, our district management plans, each of our district office administrators, each of our building level administrators, as well as our department supervisors have management plans that are aligned and in conjunction with our overall district goals. We've had a 3-year goal process. We're at the last year of this overall targeted goals, so we will reevaluate in the spring and going into the summer what the next 3 years look like. Obviously, quantifiable goals are much more challenging in the time of COVID because everything's been changing. So this year we focused on goals of opportunity and trying to level the playing field, as Mr. Keene had elaborated on a little bit earlier with some of these questions related to PSATs. We're certainly looking at those opportunities for coursework for students and opening up those avenues for students across the board, both in the middle and high school. So we give students opportunities without creating artificial roadblocks to their ability to take the courses. So, we'll bring to your attention that, our district direction statements, academic achievement, commitment to our district initiatives, preparing all learners, and the culture of success. Those are the 4 areas that really help to guide us in our decision making on a daily basis. It's been a good document to refer back to. I thank my predecessor, Mr. Buhner, for helping to put that together, and all the administrators. It's helped to scale down to each of the levels. So Mr. Backus works with our building principals and administrators to identify what those targeted statements look like at the elementary, middle, high school levels. And it helps us to get aligned so we're communicating better ultimately between each of our departments. So a lot of good work that goes on here. I encourage you to take a look at it. Gives you a good overview of what we're doing instructionally and also looking at what we're trying to do in terms of other areas such as growing diversity within our opportunities for students within the district. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those for you now. But we did go over this at the board ops meeting as well. So if you have any follow-up questions, feel free, and we'll try to answer those for you.
Thank you. Tenant reports and recommendations for action, A through I, pages 4 through 6. May I have a motion? Mrs. Colby, Mr. Ryan, thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to mention on item 10F to bring the attention we'd like to thank the Hannaford Markets for their donations, totaling probably about $3,500 to the district, and also to Mr. and Mrs. I'm not going to say the name, Selker, for the $3,000 donation for the Shana Mera Memorial Garden Fund. So I'd like to recognize those two donations and thank them for their generosity.
We certainly thank Mr. and Mrs. Saliker. They're Shana's parents, and Shana was a long-time dedicated special education teacher at Leisure Hill. Unfortunately, passed away too young. But the Memorial Garden does a nice job in her memory, and Leisure Hill continues to do a lot of community outreach in support in Shana's memory. So I certainly appreciate that donation. That Memorial Garden is probably one of the nicest ones we have in the district. It's well maintained, so we thank our staff for helping maintain that.
Any other questions or comments? Down motion made by Mrs. Cogan, second by Mr. Ryan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 8-0. Next, we have personnel instruction, pages 9 through 10. Mr. Casey and Mr. Sim. Any questions? Mr. Keane?
With the supervision for the co-curriculars, the expectation would be that they'll be delivered in some form, virtually or in person as time will.
Yes, we've really asked the middle school and high school principals to work with their staff to identify the priority clubs that can be handled both in a in-person and virtual environment, so that students, no matter what environment you're learning in, can participate. The middle schools have identified approximately 5 clubs that they wanted to focus on. They're very similar in both buildings. And I know the high school is doing something very similar. We'll probably see that maybe on the next agenda.
We should, yeah. We asked them to prioritize them, and these clubs have provided plans on how they're going to sustain themselves in whatever setting we're in.
Thank you.
Any other questions? On the motion made by Mr. Casey, second by Mr. Sim, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 8-0. Number 12, personnel support, pages 11 and 12. We have a motion, Mr. Ryan and Mr. King. Any questions? On the motion made by Mr. Ryan, second by Mr. Keane, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 8-0. Next, we have collective bargaining agreement, South County Teachers Association. May I have a motion? Ms. Busy and Mr. Ryan. And would you like to?
Certainly, about a year ago, the board had approved the memorandum of agreement through the collective bargaining agreement that the district had with our South County Teachers Association. This is the formalized contract. So now that we've gone through all the wordsmithing and editing to the actual contract, we present this for additional approval. approval by the board. As you may be aware, the Teachers Association works with us on any of the language changes, any of the new provisions that were agreed upon in the MOA. We put that into the formalized agreement. It takes a long period of time to make sure that the booklet that is presented is all set up, and Mrs. Fisher and Mr. Rogliotti have done a nice job working with our Teachers Association, and this is the outcome of that.
Any questions? Okay, on the motion made by Mrs. Gizzi, second by Mr. Ryan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 8-0. 14, resolution, you have a motion made. Mrs. Gizzi. Second, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Beck?
This one isn't for November. It started out in about 1900 out of Dr. Arthur C. Parker, a Seneca Indian, who was part of the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Rochester. He works with the Boy Scouts of America, and they first set aside a day. And starts in about 1919, the federal government starts to recognize it, but it isn't until 1990 that George Bush has a proclamation. And it's been every year since 1994. We have a variety of things that happen in the building, most notably with our fourth graders and their studies in Native America.
Any questions? Sean, Mr. Ryan?
No, just wanted to ask Mr. Casey, he was there for the 1919 beginning.
You were driving the bus, though, Mr. Ryan.
Okay.
On the motion made by Mrs. Gizzi, second by Mr. Ryan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 8-0. If you guys want to look over the future meetings, if you have any questions. Everything look okay? Okay, I need a motion to go into executive session. Mr. King, second by Mr. Casey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 8-0 at 8:22.
All right. Good night, folks. Drive safely.
Right after we push that.
Never really stop.
Amber, take your cake with you.
Mr. Gill had a
Mr.
whole
Keel's
bunch of